So we, before I even begin, so we have talked about a lot on this channel the importance, the absolute sheer importance of regulation. Not a lot of people really understand them because some are very, very highly technical details or stuff that in your regular life you may never ever have to even encounter the exact reason why this regulation exists. But as we've always said, regulation exists for a reason. For example, there is a reason why in chicken slurry factories you cannot have gangplanks going across vats. Why? Because we have seen a trend of people that would cross these gantries across these vats, and the smell of the the chicken roasting has been so pungent and so noxious. It has knocked people out on top of that gantry. They have lost consciousness and in some cases fallen into vats of chicken slurry only to then drown to death. Now, that might seem a bit, maybe obvious, maybe from a health and safety point of view. Maybe that's why you don't have these things. But the thing is, it took regulations for companies and businesses to actually start to not do that, to change their buildings, to how those gangplanks were operated and how they were made. That's what it took. And you've just had the train disaster in Ohio. And I want to point out this could very easily happen in the UK. Make no bones about it. With the amount of changes that people like Jacob Rees-Mogg want to make to the chemical industry so that they can be more competitive. The worrying thing here is that what you see in Ohio, and we'll go over that in a bit, could very easily happen here. So before we do go talking a bit more about that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there is a link down to my the Pony Club as well, where you can join that as well. And of course, there's the YouTube thank you button as well. So let's crack on with this. So for those of you who may not be aware, let's fill you in on what happened in Ohio. So about 9 or 10 days ago now, there was a very, very significant train crash happened in Ohio. Now, this train happened to be carrying a lot of chemicals, and I mean a lot of chemicals. And it seems that the whole cause of this crash, they're still looking into it. So again, some of this information may be wrong, but there was talk of like the brake being seen on fire before it got to where it crashed. There was a whole thing about the length of the train was far too long. It shouldn't have been that length. The crew on the train was sort of too few to be able to sort of manage that train. There seems to be basically a lot of errors here. But this has caused such a chemical spill with numerous different types of chemicals. I mean, we're talking one of these trains, these compartments, these tankers that it was carrying mustard gas. And if you know anything about mustard gas doesn't just dissipate easily. It goes and it seeps into, holes and it stays there for quite some time sometimes. And sometimes the other chemicals do not go away. They need to be treated and washed down, and the surfaces, scrubbed and make sure that this goes away. So the place where this has happened is going to be a massive, massive hotspot for years, if not decades, for severe chemical related injuries, you're talking cancers. Who knows what else is going to crop up from this place? But it gets even worse because now only the companies are now saying, oh, well, actually, there was also this chemical that was there, and there was this chemical that was on there 10 days after the accident. And some of these chemicals are incredibly toxic, incredibly carcinogenic. And yet we are only finding out now because the companies are only now being forced to admit some of these chemicals that they were using. Now, bear in mind the REACH regulations, which Jacob Rees-Mogg has said, oh, we need to leave and get rid of. Those regulations basically say if you're a chemical company and you're transporting something, you have to tell the government, this is the chemical that I'm making, this is what I'm transporting, this is where I'm taking it to, this is what it's going to be used to make. And of course, the government can go, well, okay, you can use that chemical if you want, but there are other shall we say, less dangerous chemicals, you can use. So yeah, it's you can see why we need these chemical regulations. And it's not just that, there are a ton of chemical regulations that Jacob Rees-Mogg wants to get rid of because they're, quote, protectionist and anti-competition. But as we've said before, when you look at some of these regulations, some are ensuring that the chemical manufacturer is buying and keeping up to date and making sure that that equipment to keep the workers safe is still safe and it is protective, and that it is, checked regularly for any damages, and that the stuff is replaced. That is a regulation that Jacob Rees-Mogg wants to get rid of. So now you see why it is so important to have these types of regulations. And what you've seen there in Ohio is a result of America not having strict regulations on the transportation of chemicals, which we've currently got now, which we might not by the end of the year. We've got health and safety worker regulations. You look at the train regulations that are nowhere near the same we have in the UK. And as I've said time and time again, eventually it is very likely that, given the fact that these regulations could go at the end of the year, we could be sitting on a ticking time bomb for an accident like in Ohio waiting to happen. And the thing is, a chemical spill like that, once it's happened, is going to be affecting that area for decades. And once it's done, you can't very well easily undo it. I mean, one of the other things that's come out recently is that they are worried that some of the drinking water in the area has been contaminated. And I think when you're testing for the drinking water, you don't know. You've got to specifically look for what you're testing. You can't just do a blanket test and just go, "Oh, look, we've found something." No, you've got to actually know what you're looking for. And when you've got these companies that only very recently have only admitted to some of the dangerous chemicals they were carrying, how do the people who are trying to test this water to see if the drinking water is safe know what they're looking for to make sure that, people don't end up drinking that contaminated water and end up in a health and safety, public safety nightmare, maybe a year or two down the line over there? I mean, we're going to be seeing news stories emanating from this disaster for years because of this. And yet, people and the Conservatives want to deregulate. So next time you see someone talk about, deregulation, point them to this video, ask them about the Ohio train crash, point out that that crash only happened because America's low standards and its deregulatory path that the Conservatives want to push on allowed this train crash and disaster to happen to Ohio. And ask yourselves this question: do you want a similar disaster to happen in your area? If not, then you should absolutely push your MP or write to your MP today to say, do everything in your power to make sure that the EU reform and regulation retained EU law bill is dead, that it does not pass. Because what happened in Ohio could very easily happen in your own constituency if you allow this to pass. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, do remember to ring the bell as well on your way out so you get notifications about the channel. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.